So thank you very much for coming. Yeah, quite a few people left. But anyways, so yeah, once again, thank you for coming. My name is Timur. I'm the co-founder and managing director of Rebound Mobile. And so what we do is essentially we help mobile game companies tap into complex markets. We initially started with the Russian markets, pretty complicated. Then now we're working in two markets, in the Korean and the Russian markets. And so we've for like 1.5 years of our existence, we've kind of collected some experience that we want to share, that we think would be interesting for you. And last time at PG Connect's Helsinki, I was talking about our how to crack the Russian market and how to make millions there. And today I think we're gonna. I want to talk more about like the global picture and how to choose the right market for you globally. So the question here is, why is global marketing, why is internationalization important? And there are a few reasons for that. One of the reasons is that mobile gaming business is extremely scalable, and not capitalizing on that would be deemed criminal. So make sure you cover as many markets as you possibly can. The user acquisition, another reason is that user acquisition on the West is getting super competitive, and I think everyone in this room who's done mobile marketing has experienced that at some point for the last few years. And then return investments in other markets where you're not yet present or where you're not running user acquisition or marketing campaigns could be much higher, but you wouldn't know it unless you give it a try. Now, how to identify your next target market? This is the question that at some point comes to everyone, and we are Rebound Mobile trying to figure out what markets should be appealing and interesting to our clients. We've identified several of comparison criteria of the markets, and we put them together and kind of made a chart where we see which mobile markets are the most interesting, and now I'm going to talk about it. So the first comparison criterion that we use is the market size. Before that, just want to let you know that there are two things that we have identified to compare the markets. The first one is the market data itself. Another one is the games data. So you have to take the markets data and the games data, such as games revenue, together, and that's how you're going to run the comparison. So the market data is the market size, the market growth, the Western content acceptance, because we're primarily working with Western games and Western game companies, the competition in the markets of where you're planning to go, and English language proficiency. And I'm going to talk about all this in more details. So the good question is that we put together all this information. We've collected all this data and put it together in one tool that you can use on our website. And here's what we've got when we made our research. So the market size was pretty easy to find out. We've got we've sourced the data from different sources, and we've put them together, and this is what we got. The Chinese market is the biggest one, obviously. The USA, Japan, Korea are like the top 4, and so on, and it goes on. So market size is obvious and pretty easy to identify, to get the data. And then the growth, this is important because you don't want to miss out on opportunities within the next few years. Indonesia, so if you look at this chart, you can see that the white lines here represent the conventional or tier 1 markets, which normally companies target first, and then there are purple lines which represent the tier 2, tier 3, or non-conventional markets, which many companies miss out on. So as you can see on the growth side, the non-conventional, the tier 2, tier 3 markets are at the top. So that means that in the next few years they're going to be much bigger than they are now. For instance, Indonesia is going to grow 120% in the next few years by 2021. So this is the data we've got from Statista. The Western content acceptance, if you look at this screenshot from the top grossing ranks in these three markets, in China, Korea, and Japan, you can notice there that there is like the top grossing ranks are very unilateral. So in China, there are like the most revenue generating games are local ones. In Korea, there is only one game company from outside of Korea, which is from Europe or from West, which is Supercell. A few games from Japan, but other than that, it's pretty much Korean. And in Japan, it's also like highly dominated by Japanese companies. But then there are other markets where Western games and Western game companies and Asian, where the top grossing ranks are pretty diverse, and that speaks for that some markets globally have are more accepting Western content than the others, and you really want to focus on the markets which are more welcoming for the Western content, and these are those markets. Obviously, the Western markets, get a higher acceptance rate. We've got this chart by going through the top 100 ranks and trying and identifying identifying games developed by Western game developers, and the number over there indicates the amount of games developed by Western game developers in the top 100 ranks, grossing ranks. And then the competition, this is really interesting. We couldn't find this data in open sources, so we put it together ourselves. We've got the mobile advertising spending in each particular country, and the number of smartphones in that particular country. And so we divided the number of advertising spending by the number of smartphones, and we've got the average spending per smartphone in each particular market. And the more the spending is, the more the number is, the higher the competition is. And as you can see, the American market at the bottom is the most competitive one. It's got around $200 a year spent per smartphone. And Turkey, Vietnam, and India are the top three where the competition is the lowest one. So so just keep the data in mind when you're trying to go to some market. English language proficiency. This is more related to, or this is more related towards working with local companies. If you want to put some marketing effort, say in Korea or in Japan, it's really difficult to communicate with local companies. So you really want to have English language proficiency on a high level in some markets if you're going there. And these are the results of the overall research that we've made. The USA is the top market, so for Western game developers, if you put together all that data. Turkey and India are following, and bear in mind that this chart and this research also includes the data of data in the next few years. So it doesn't necessarily mean that that Turkey or India or that you have to go there right now, but just this is the markets that will be promising, will be interesting for you maybe in 1-2 years. And then we've got the additional comparison criteria, which is the game-specific data, which is LTV, LTV data as it is doesn't speak for anything. What you have to do is you have to compare markets by return investments, and return investments is calculated by dividing LTV to CPI. So return investments is the criterion that you can use to compare the markets. And in our tool, we've got that if you just enter your LTV, you can we calculate the CPI for your game in each market, and you can actually compare the markets. So this data, game-specific data, is being added to the market data, and the tool will give you the results of which markets are the most interesting to you with these two data combined. And a few words about like the biggest market in the world, which many think of it. So in China, the distribution model is not as it is on the West. There is like, you cannot publish your game there without a local publisher, and each layer of the distribution takes its own cut on the revenue. So for every $10 spent on, so on the monetization side, there is also a mobile carrier that charges a certain amount of revenue. So out of $10 spent by a user, the developer, if they are from the West, they get around $2.5, so it's like 25%. So that makes the Chinese market shrink from $10 billion to around $2.5 billion, which makes the Chinese market not the biggest one. And just bear this in mind if you were thinking about going to China. Maybe it's not worth that, and maybe there are other markets where which are more attractive and appealing. So thank you so much. That's it for now. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know.
Very good. It was very compact. I wasn't quite ready. You got ahead of me there. That was really interesting. I really like the real value of the market. That's kind of an interesting. So is that are you making that available as a report, or is that just an internal presentation? No,
it's you can actually. So here on this slide. Oh, can I go back? Here on this slide, there's a link to that tool, the market ranker, we call it, that you can use to actually like run that evaluation.
I was just trying to tweet it out, and you finished me. So we've got time for one question. Everybody's got a question, or we can just gonna catch up space and skip ahead. Is there a question? There's a question at the back there.
All your revenue is based off IAP. Do you have anything for eCPM or advertising-based revenue?
Well, the data that we've got for the revenue in markets, I think it includes, we've got it from different sources, but I think it all includes in-app purchases and advertising revenue altogether. So there wasn't any like distribution or division on that.
Okay, cool.
And also, like, bear with us. This is our first version of the market ranker. There are going to be more, and if it will be popular, I think we're going to get it developed more.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great idea. I mean, like, yeah, the top line numbers are great, but you need to. How realistic is that?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Can a round of applause, please, for Timur?